about 5 years ago, and I've been working as a clinical fellow in Cardiff, and now I still work in Wales, just in Bridget now. And I love working with children. And I'm a mother of 3 girls, 14, 12, and 8. And we have a comatose life. Well, not comatose, but a roller coaster life of working full time and having teenagers and all that. But yeah, so that's me. And today I'll be talking about wellness in children and the importance of nutrition and exercise. And I'll try not to make it too medical, but excuse me if I try to go too medical as well. But I want us to just interact like mothers. All right. So what is wellness? Well, when I was looking through, I just realized that it's just a lifelong process. It starts from when the child is born till how we are now as adults until we become old. And it's just for us to be aware of the kind of choices and lifestyles that we make so that we can live actually a balanced and fulfilled life. So that's just all wellness is about. Somehow like having a good kind of life, if you want to put it as simple as that. And of course, if you want to have this balanced, fulfilled life, then you have to also practice healthy habits. And it's a continuous thing, it's a daily thing, it's almost like a minute by minute thing, so that then you can have a better physical and a better mental health outcome. And when you have all that, then you're not just surviving as every day, but you're thriving. And then thriving just means that even when things are not like rosy, you can still live, you still feel fulfilled in what you're doing. So generally, that is what wellness is all about. And why are we talking about wellness in children? Well, we know that when there is wellness, it's, let me see. Okay, so when we're talking of wellness, that indication of when there's wellness in children, it's an indication of wellness of the community, because what happens is that if you nurture healthy children, then it's likely that they will become healthy adults, and then you will have a vibrant society and a vibrant community. So, and it's well established that for children, any experiences that they have in their early livelihood, and in their early childhood has a large effect and impact on their later life. So if you train up a child and the all around them is quite positive, and they're able to cope even when there are negatives, these children, it's shown that these children have better outcomes as opposed to children who like have kind of very disruptive lifestyles and disruptive childhood. They don't tend to turn out very well. And I'm sure that when we work, even in our GP practices, in our own different practices, you can see that adults that have a kind of disturbed mental health, disturbed social life, when you go back and take a very good history, there are things that have disrupted their early childhood and impacting on their lives. So it's important that we kind of make sure that our children have a positive outlook to life, and they can attain this life that they can thrive even in the midst of difficulty. So I'll just say it's early preparation and the issue of teaching them young, catching them young. So when we look at wellness, it impacts several aspects of our lives, and it's more than this. Some writers have added some other parts, but I just took this wellness, emotional environment, some type of financial wellness, and they're all interrelated. Because I'm asked to speak about um, nutrition and exercise, which is basically under physical wellness. wellness. And physical, like lower the as physical, yes. Mental health, developing our mind through learning. Children can and exercise wellness. They need to aware themselves and be in touch with themselves. And then, of course, how to communicate their feelings, accept them, and be able to also accept other people's feelings. Spiritual wellness is just the search for meaning and purpose in one's existence. Social wellness is being able to connect and interact with others and contribute to other people and the community. And then environmental wellness just is how to live a healthy physical environment free of hazards and aware of the role we need to play so that we can preserve our environment. So if you look at all of this, they all kind of interrelate with one another, to be honest. And we will see how that goes as we continue to talk. So let's quickly look at physical wellness, which is actually the crux of the whole discussion this evening. It refers to the body's ability to remain in optimal health and also to function optimally. So not just necessarily that there is no disease or sickness, but you're in good health and then you can also function optimally. And it basically involves having a good nutrition, regular exercise, and of course, adequate rest. So why do we want to talk about physical wellness, especially when it relates to our children? This is a table I saw, and it just reflects the main top, what is going on in our society now, the issue of obesity. And this is a statistics from England, and I think it's what reflects most parts of the United Kingdom. And even in some of our developing countries, now, if you look, it says about 28% of children between 2 to 15 are overweight or obese. And they are becoming more obese in an earlier age, and they are staying obese even into adulthood. And if you look at 4 to 5 year olds in England, now if you look at it, about 22 of this 100, which is about a quarter of them, will either be overweight or obese. And as they go out onto adolescence and into adolescence and the teenage years, you can see that number increasing. So it is a worry when we're talking about physical wellness. And we of course know that this is a health hazard and a health alert. And so many things are now being put in place to tackle overweight and obesity in children, even as young as 4 and 5 year olds. Now, if you look at the percentage there of, you just have like 1 in 100 who are underweight. And that number seems to remain the same when they get to adolescent age. So it's something for us to think about. And I know so much is said about overweight and underweight, but we also need to think about the concept of hidden hunger, whereby even though the children are underweight or overweight or obese, they might still be lacking in essential micronutrients. And that's the concept of hidden hunger. Then there are these essential micronutrients, basically the minerals and vitamins that the body cannot produce. We need to get them in our food. We need to get them in our nutrition. And they are very, very important for development, our cognition, function, and survival. Because if these minerals and vitamins are not available, then they will negatively impact on our health. But then again, we can easily be carried away that, oh, children are obese, they're obese. We need to tackle obesity. And underlying it, they're just having all these calories and missing out in their nutrients. So something for us to think about. And these nutrients, you can see them enlisted there, most of the vitamins and most of the minerals that are essential for that can be found in our foods. So that is why physical wellness is important. Of course, when they are underweight, our mind is already tuned that, oh, they might have some micronutrient deficiency. But it's very easy for us to forget that even when they are obese and they are overweight, they still can suffer hidden hunger. All right, so how can we tackle this concept of malnutrition? Because whether you're obese, whether you're overweight, whether you're underweight or underweight is still a form of malnutrition. We need to be talking about good nutrition, because good nutrition, as we all know, is essential for one's survival. And then we start talking about physical growth. Then we talk of mental development. And when all these are in place, then we can talk of our children being able to perform, being productive, and not just as children, but then it cuts across their entire lifespan. And it is important that we're talking about good nutrition and involving the children in recognizing the importance of nutrition in an early age, because what they grasp at this early age is what they carry along. And when we're talking about good nutrition, there is the things that we need to emphasize is the nutrient-dense foods and the limiting of our calories. When we talk of nutrient-dense foods, we put those 5 groups of foods there. And what is recommended that we should be having to ensure that we are eating healthy. So when you talk about protein, we're talking about more of lean meat as opposed to red meat, poultry, beans, eggs, seafoods, peas, soy products, unsalted nuts and seeds. We're talking about fruits. We're talking of them being fresh, and fresh. Of course, when you can still have them canned, frozen, or dried. But it's also important that for us to know that sometimes when you're having these dried fruits, you might be having too much calories in them. So it's also quantity. And then our vegetables, again, we recommend that they are fresh, and fresh. There is also the place for you to have them when they are canned, frozen, dried. And it's important that there is a variety of vegetables in our diet, in the meals that we cook for our children. The emphasis is also placed on whole grain as opposed to refined grains. And when we're talking of dairy, we're encouraged for us to have fat-free or low-fat milk, yogurts, cheese, or fortified soya products. Yes, some people will say, oh, the children need full cream milk. But again, you also need to look at the quantity and the calories, because you can still get the calories that are required even when you have fat-free or low-fat milk. And then when we are done with our nutrient-dense foods, it's also important that we are limiting our calories. I know that a lot of us have sweet tooth, but again, we need to be conscious that these saturated sugars are not healthy and they have so much calories. And we're encouraged that we focus on having naturally occurring sugars that you find in fruits and that you find in milk. And as much as is possible, we should limit added sugars. So like if we're giving our children cereals, if we put milk in that, we know that there is milk and there is already sugar in milk, and that should suffice for them. Of course, we also know the impact of saturated fat, which is most of the fats that we see in animal fat. So it's preferred that if you're cooking, you should use vegetable fats and oils. It's good to snack, but also if we want to eat and eat healthy, then we should be thinking of fruits and vegetables more replacing our cookies and our chips, because all these have refined sugars, they have salts, which are high in calories and can impact on nutrition and impact on growth and development. So salt snacks that are fruits and vegetables are preferred, and there are a wide variety of that we can always alternate when we are trying to prepare healthy meals for our children. Now, this is for us to think about and, look at what we're doing as mothers, what we're doing as people who want to make sure that our children have good nutrition, and start thinking of how we can assess our food cupboards, our shopping lists, our cooking, and how we present this food to our children. Because, like I said, when sometimes we see obese children, we say a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, basically is the choices of the parents. If the parents is feeding them on KFC or pizzas every evening, it's not really the child's choice. It's a parent's choice buying those things and putting them before the children. So we have a big responsibility in ensuring that we are presenting good nutrition to our children and making them understand all why they need to have these foods. Because left to the child alone as well, they will also want to only be eating KFC, but we need to also make them understand and involve them. And this is what my next slide is going to be talking about. So when we're talking about good nutrition, it doesn't just stop as having the list of what is right and what is wrong, but also knowing what portions we should be giving our foods. And this is just, well, it's just the size of a plate. And what it shows there is like about half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables, just a quarter of it whole grains, and then another quarter of it meat and proteins. And then you have a glass of milk, basically. This is what is recommended. Some will say 1/3. But the emphasis is that fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables, should serve a major portion of our plate. And then the grains, because these are like high dense calorie foods, should serve like a quarter. And if we have that in the back of our minds as we serve, as we cook, then we wouldn't be far from doing the right things for our children. And then I've put not just food portions, but our food preparation. And our food preparation starts from our shopping list. So we probably will need to start replacing some of the things that we have on our shopping list. If as mothers, we want to say that we want to give our children good nutrition and involve the children. Let them tell you what is not in the house, what we need, and what we need to buy. And you, as the mother, will guide on what we need to buy, what is good nutrition, what meals we're going to prepare, and what we need for those meals, so that, the children are involved. It's not like you're just putting the food before them. I can tell you that some children, and we'll get to that, may not eat the food if they are not really involved or know why they have to eat this particular food or this vegetable. All right. And the shopping list comes from our meal planner. So if we have meal planners, that also helps us, not just helping us in choosing what we pick from the shelves, but also kind of saving us money. Because when you look in your cupboard and you see, oh, I have this, then you know what to replace and what to buy, what alternatives to make. And that goes a long way. And then the issue of trying new recipes. I know for some of us, we're really stuck with our what we know, and we find it difficult to try new things. But I've also found out that some of the meals that we prepare, you can have alternatives to the meals, and they might not be too far from what you are used to, but just using a different kind of recipe or a different kind of vegetable in that meal, changes the whole meal and may give it a better presentation for your child to have. So we should not be afraid to try new recipes and involve your children in trying these new recipes as well. Of course, we talk of cooking methods, because we also know that when we're talking of nutrition and we're talking of preserving our vitamins and our minerals in our food, we know that some cooking methods already kill all these nutrients. And we might be saying, oh yes, I'm cooking vegetables every time for my child. But if you're cooking the vegetable for an hour, you're sure that it's unlikely to have any vitamins in them by the time you're serving your child. So our cooking methods are very important. Steaming, boiling, sometimes having them completely fresh, as opposed to, frying some of these foods. And then the way we serve and present the food to the children is also very, very important. Let the children be involved. Let the portions, when you're serving portions, it is important that you give smaller portions that a child can finish, as opposed to large portions that could be wasted. And those large portions already discourage the child from eating. If you have smaller portions of different things in the plate, then it encourages the child to try everything that has been presented to them. And then you're more likely to get more of the nutrients in than if you're putting large portions before the child. And then we have storing of our foods. I know that sometimes when food is not eaten, we can preserve in the fridge or in the freezer. But it's also important that some of these foods have shelf lives, and you should make sure that if you're deciding to keep leftovers, you should also decide how soon you want to have them, because the longer they stay also in the freezer, some of those cooked foods lose their nutrition and they might not be safe even for eating, even when you have rewarmed them and you don't want to be poisoning your family or poisoning your children. So it's very, very important. And sometimes when you bring back these foods, there are different ways you can also represent them, so that even though it's a leftover from the previous evening or the previous day, the way you've presented it again makes it a new food for the child to try. And it's not saying, oh, why we had rice yesterday, why are we having it today? So very, very important part of the nutrition, and very, very important part of ensuring that, children are involved. And it doesn't matter the age. They can be in the kitchen with you, helping you to chop things, helping you to peel things, even calling out when you're doing a new recipe, helping you, calling out the ingredients, measuring ingredients. It's found out that when children are involved, they anticipate eating the food, and you can get most of these foods down there, even the ones that they seem not to want to try, because they've been involved in cooking it, because they have been part of choosing that food. They become so involved in wanting to taste and eat this food. And this is very important, because you might not have your children with you all the time. And if they are going to go somewhere, probably for a sleepover, or they are going camping somewhere, and they are met with something that they are not familiar with, the idea that they are not stuck to one kind of menu, they are able to have an open mind to food and try what is presented to them, makes life very easy. So Very, very important. Now, we might say that sounds like very ideal, but we have children who, irrespective of what you do, they will be picky eaters. They will just not eat the food that is presented to them, even if they are involved and even if they are, you've tried everything. And we see that sometimes walking through the clinics, walking through the hospital. And these children are prone to malnutrition, especially hidden hunger, iron deficiency, anemia. What we keep on saying is we have to keep on trying and experimenting with these children, getting them to participate and then experiment, participate and experiment. And one of the dietitians that works with us was telling us that sometimes it involves you letting these children begin to, I know that we say in Africa, you don't play with food, isn't it? But sometimes you need to let these children texturize the food, play with the food to the point that they know that they so play with it, they mistakenly put it in the mouth, they realize that, oh, this thing is edible, this thing can be eaten. And then they whether what by whichever means or way, their mind tells them, okay, yes, they can taste this food. So one method that she was telling me about that they use like in the community for picky eaters is like playing with food. They lay out all the foods on the table or on the floor and allow the child to play with it and feel it. In the process of playing with it, they taste some and they realize that, okay, they can eat this, they can have it. It's not bad. And I know that that will take a lot of patience, because if you have a tight schedule, you might not have time for all that. But then it's something that we need to do if we want our children to have good nutrition. We can't just take and say, oh, he's a picky eater, he only eats this, only takes milk, he's 5 years and it's only milk that he will take. Definitely the child will come down with with malnutrition, with deficiencies, definitely. And then even in looking at, when we still look at when we're looking at good nutrition, there are children who have food allergies, who have intolerances, cow milk allergies. Some children have egg allergies, chocolate allergies. Some even the preservatives in foods, they're allergic to it. And we have to accommodate for them. When you understand that a child, we know that protein comes when you take milk or eggs. There is that's where most protein you get the protein requirements from. But if the child has egg allergy or is cow milk intolerant, then you have to be thinking of alternatives to that. If the child has celiac, you have to be thinking of alternatives to that so that you don't compromise the child's nutrition. Of course, there are children that have special needs. There are children who have autism, and we know that the difficulties they have with feeding because of color, tastes, aversion. And these children are prone to some form of malnutrition, some form of hidden hunger because of the limited nutrients that they are taking in. But again, we have to find a way of making alternatives for these children. There are some children that special needs, developmental delays, they are NG tube fed, they are NJ tube fed. Some of them have PEG tubes, and that's what they use to feed. Working with the doctors, working with the dietitian to ensure that the kind of nutrition they have is able to, the calories they receive in their special diets, in their special feeds, in their blended feeds, are able to, make sure that they are growing and developing, and they are not they are not malnourished, or they are not getting less calories that they require. So all these have to also be considered when we're talking about nutrition, because again, it's not an ideal world, and there are people that will be on the other end of the spectrum that we need to accommodate for. So quickly, we'll look at the other aspects, which is exercise. Of course, if you have good nutrition, for you to balance and have a physical wellness, then you need to bring exercise into place. And we all know the importance of exercise. Physical exercise especially, first and foremost, is for weight maintenance. If we able to maintain our weight, then we're likely to reduce we're less likely to develop obesity. So it doesn't just stop at having to take in the calories limit. We need to be moving. We need to be, in motion. When we exercise, we boost our energy. We build our strong bones and muscles. So it's not just the vitamin D and the calcium the bones need, but the exercise also helps the bones and the muscles to function. Now, the micronutrients and the vitamins are good for our physical being and all the chemical processes that are going on in our bodies for survival. But again, we need the exercise for a positive mental health. We need exercise because exercise promotes good quality sleep. And we've seen that rest and sleep is also a very important aspect of physical wellness. Of course, when you're exercising in the long term, we've seen that it reduces the risk of developing any form of chronic disease, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease. And of course, experts have shown that when we are physically active, it helps children to build their self-esteem. It helps them in tax management as well because of the kind of exercises they're engaged in. When they also exercise, it's a way of letting go of their emotions. And it helps them to achieve academic success as well, and they're able to handle their environment better. So exercise is a very, very important part of physical wellness. And we should be encouraging our children, encouraging ourselves as well as mothers to be involved in exercise. And what are the kind of exercises that we're talking about? Every kind of exercise is good. Every kind of exercise. We have physical activities, walking, running, dancing, riding, gymnastics. When you play active games like hopping, skipping, when they're involved in sports, swimming, football, tennis, all these forms of exercise are very, very important. They are good for the children. And then, of course, they should be tailored to be age appropriate and child safe. All right? Whatever form of exercise that is going on should be age appropriate and child safe. Now, the exercise not only stops at physical activities, but of course, if we're talking about building mental health, building, physical wellness, and we're saying that all of these aspects of wellness are interrelated, there are still some form of exercise that are mental activities. For example, the board games that we have, Scrabble, Monopoly, Snake and Ladders, even jigsaws, they are all forms of mental activities that help to build the child. And so we should be encouraged that, yes, it might be a rainy day and you can't go out to walk or run or ride the bike, but you can stay in the confines of your house and do a jigsaw puzzle with your child. And you know that the jigsaws or the puzzles, they are in different shapes, different sizes, and different age ranges. And even as adults, you have jigsaw puzzles that can really task you. Now, these help to develop your child's mental capability and mental capacity. Look at a game like Monopoly. It's trading, it's business, it's money. It helps the child, to see calculations, money, change, investment. Look at a game like Scrabble. It helps word formation. And yes, you might have a 5-year-old that might not understand the competitiveness of Scrabble, if I want to put it that way. But even them learning words like cat, dog, and just putting them on the Scrabble board, makes them realize, okay, I have this number of letters and I can put them together, puts the child's brain to work, and that is a form of exercise. Look at a game like chess, puts them to think. So it's important that, yes, physical exercise is good, but also mental activities. It's very important in building that physical wellness that we want in our children. I've put in other things like memory jars, imaginative play, storytelling, and all these are mental activities that don't necessarily need to be in the house. But, you know, sometimes the child is upset. They have emotion jars. You can write how you feel and put into that. And it's a mental activity because the child is going to sit back and think about, okay, how am I feeling, and write about it and put it down. And you can go back and talk it through with your child. Yes, it might not be happy days all the time. You might have a sad day. And this is what you've gone through. How do we go through it? Okay, let's go have a walk. Let's talk about it. And this, you know, helps your child to understand the need to adjust and develop even when things are not going the way that they want them to go. You're building some form of resilience in the child. All right. So how can we better exercise? Well, we need to also, as adults, be part of this physical activity, because when we do that, we're spending time together as a family. We should take advantage of public parks, fields, courts, even community centers, sometimes even our libraries. Sometimes they have these games that you can go there and engage in mental activities. The parks and the fields, the courts, they have all these games. You can take the ball there and play with your child. You can take the skipping rope and just skip along in the park with them, play races. And that's a form of exercise, because as you're involved in them, you know, you create it as a game and they're almost not realizing that they are doing it. You are also doing it and they're involved, and it brings that kind of togetherness. When they go out in the park, they meet other people, and children that they are, they begin to play together, they begin to understand other people, they begin to form that social, you know, social environment and interaction, and see what it means, not just in the four corners of their homes, but what it means to be involved in the community. You know, you can also keep an eye on events that promote physical activity, either in the school or either in your community. And this just helps you to come together and helps to also be involved in other physical activities that people are involved in. You can challenge your child for them to take time off their electronic devices, because that's what we see is the electronic devices that are keeping the children on the couch, making them obese because they are snacking on their devices, not moving. And you just challenge them. Okay, 1 hour off the device, 1 hour we're going for a walk. Let's go and play with a friend. Let's go out into the park. 2 hours, we're going to be playing Monopoly, or we're going to be playing this game, and that's that. So we challenge them. Because you can team up with parents, families, and friends in your neighborhood. And like just not having the birthday that everybody's coming and sit down and eat. You can have a game-themed birthday, a Christmas celebration where you're doing any form of celebration. You can incorporate things that involve physical activity, mental activities, and all this help to you know, develop the child and bring us together even as community. Now, when we're talking about wellness in children and building resilience, it's very important for us to know that it starts from the parents and the adults, because the child basically doesn't know what to do. He's going to learn from the adults that he's seen. So we as mothers and as parents and as carers, we need to also stay physically and emotionally stable. If they see that you're not doing what you're saying, it's likely that they will not follow, because children most of the time learn by example. They learn by just watching and observing. So if we say, let's go to the park and go and play for an hour, and we are sat down watching television, they're unlikely going to go. Or if you say, go off your phone for 1 hour, my children tell me, when I say go off the phone for 1 hour, they'll say, oh, mommy, but you're on your phone. I say, okay, fine. We're all off our phones. So they will challenge you when you tell them to do something and you're also not doing it. So we need to stay physically and emotionally stable. And we need to practice these daily habits and activities that enhance this overall wellness and reduce stress. Because in that way, we will be able to inculcate them into our children, and they will see it. It's also okay for them to know that every day is not going to be rosy, and that is the resilience that they need to see. Every day is not going to be rosy, but I can still pull through it. They need to see that. Of course, when we are trying to build resilience and we're using nutrition and exercise, we as parents also need to recognize the children's ability and their inner resources and enhance that. And some psychologists has used this 7 C's, competence, you're recognizing what the child has, you're trying to build their confidence, you connect with them, you're looking at their character, and then the inner resources they have, they bring it out and contribute. And that is where you're trying to involve them, And even though everything doesn't go as they want it to go, they should be able to cope. There are coping mechanisms there, and they are not getting to breaking points and giving up. They are able to take control of their physical wellness, their emotional wellness, take control of the decisions they make. And, all this helps them to build that resilience that we want for our children. So in conclusion, we know that wellness is a lifelong process from childhood to adulthood. That is very important. Now, the different aspects of wellness, as you can see from the talk, they are all kind of related and they impact on each other. So if you're going to be physically well, yes, food and nutrition, but you also need to rest so that you can be mentally stable. When you're mentally stable, then you can think of, oh, how do I now interact with other people around me? If you're not mentally stable, you might not want anybody around you. And we talk about social wellness, and then how you want to make sure that, okay, there's a community out there that I need to interact with. There is also an inner being there, or someone more superior. You're thinking of your spiritual well-being. You're also thinking of the environmental well-being. So they're all kind of related. If you're going to go out in the park with your child, you want to make sure that you're not going to go out in the park, your child has eaten and they litter the place. You're not being friendly to the environment. You're not going to be able to come back to that environment if you have not thought about the well-being of that environment. So everything is interrelated. We want to plant, we want to see if, even in our back garden, whether we can be self-sufficient to plant some of these foods that we want for ourselves, So everything is interrelated and they impact on each other. And it is important for us to know that good parenting, relationships, and social emotional skills are very important for wellness and building resilience in children. So I hope at the end of this talk, I've been able to talk about wellness, see the importance of physical wellness as it relates to nutrition and our exercise, and how wellness is so interrelated, and how as parents, we need to be well to be able to impact that wellness in our children for there to be a better community. Thank you. I know.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Iyabo. That was really, really educating. If you've noticed, I didn't actually text you to tell you that time was up. I was just enjoying myself and taking my notes on my notepad. So it's very, very, it's there's so much information, so much I've learned today. You talked about involving the children with the cooking, especially when it comes to the micronutrients. You know how they carry cucumber and you're like,
yeah,
what is this? So I think for me that resonated really well, because most times I'm always rushing around. So I'm like, you guys just give me space, I need to finish cooking this food, let me just go. But then creating that time to actually spend that time with them, they are probably more likely to eat it. And that makes a lot of sense. Anyone that has any questions should pop it in the comment section. I've taken notes, I'll put them together, and hopefully we'll get the YouTube video on that. So Dr. Tomilola did call had to cancel, unfortunately, on us today, and she was supposed to talk about emotional intelligence. And interestingly, it's a very dear topic to me, because I've recently read the book, the Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence, more important than IQ. And, having your child develop that emotional intelligence will actually help to build their resilience. So what I did, I think last night before I slept, I just mocked up a couple of points on it, and I'll take the floor for like 5 minutes. And anyone who has any sort of questions or comments, then we just sort of, recap the whole thing for the past few months, and then we can take it from there. So I'm trying to share my screen. Share screen, yes, that's it. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Can you see my?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just literally like a couple of points, and I haven't really prepared, so it'd be nice if from the beginning, if anyone adds any extras to what I'm going to say, which is literally just from nowhere, because I haven't really done anything much about this. So, what is emotional intelligence? Just a couple of points. It's abbreviated in abbreviations, we call it EI. So, emotional intelligence is the ability to be smart about your feelings, our own feelings, and other people's feelings. It involves being able to notice, understand, and act on emotions in an effective way. So growing up, my mom used to always say something like things like, "Oh, if it's not everything that you see that you react to." And I called her recently and I said, "Mommy, so that was emotional intelligence." She's like, "Yeah, but how can I tell you? How can I use such big terminology on you? You are so little." So it just means basically regulating your emotions, and it's important that when they're small, they learn it, because as a Nigerian, I am Nigerian originally. I'm not sure that we are really being taught emotional intelligence, in school. It's not something that is so emphasized. So coming up and growing up to be an adult, you're realizing that when it comes to how you feel and how to communicate that feelings and how to make how to be aware of the way you're feeling and the way you behave with respect to other people being around. I'm not sure it's something that we are taught at a very young age, but I noticed that my children here in school, they do teach them emotional intelligence, and it's part of what we need to try to imbibe in them to also build their resilience. Okay, so next slide. So it has a lot of it has a couple of points to it. Self-awareness is when a person knows what he's feeling at a particular time. You understand how you feel, you're upset, and you understand how your mood affects others. Being in a place and knowing that, okay, when a group and then something irritates you as a child, knowing that you need to be aware that, if I act up, I'm going to spoil the party. So even if I'm upset, I'm going to have to think about it and say, okay, Mama, what am I going to do? Someone took my toy. I'm not going to throw a tantrum and spoil the whole party because I'm upset. So it's trying to, teach them to regulate their emotions. And in as much as they're upset, they understand and they validate their own feelings, but they have to think about the people where they are. They have to understand where they are. So it's about self-awareness and social awareness. Going back, if I go forward. Okay, so self-regulation. The child should be able to control how he responds to his own emotions. So like I said, in this particular situation, in a party, you're upset, and then before you throw that tantrum, you are considering the possible consequences before acting on impulse. So rather than jumping on the floor and literally just rolling around and saying, someone took my toy, you're thinking, oh, if I do that, maybe I'll spoil the party. Maybe I should just go and sit on mommy's leg. So those are things that apparently we have to imbibe in our children from very young age. It actually helps to build them up for the future and actually builds their resilience. Next point was motivation. A child can accomplish goals in spite of negative or distracting feelings he may be having. And the example I will always bring with this one, because I have an 8-year-old, is homework. Sometimes homework is hard, but you have to do it. You say, so when the child feels, oh, mommy, this math is just a little challenging, I don't understand it. Okay, sorry, come on, get caught, then you go back to do it. So it's getting that motivation to be able to rise above challenges. And all that is part of emotional intelligence. And that is something that, we have to build in our children. We have to encourage them every day to develop that as a skill. Empathy, obviously, empathy is quite common, something that we talk about a lot in the UK. understanding how others feel, having to acknowledge the feelings of others, showing empathy, showing love, be kind, be kind. Someone's upset, you can't just be dancing. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. Someone's upset, you have to show empathy. And the last one was social awareness and skills. He can manage relationships and he knows what kind of behaviors get a positive response from others. Do you see? So it's the ability for a child to actually gauge the situation and say, okay, if I do this, that's a kind thing to do. You see my 6-year-old, she was like, oh, my 6-year-old, she told me the other day, Mom, I took Mark's pen by mistake. And I just dragged it. I think I took it suddenly or something. And he was writing and he made a mistake. Then the next day, then I made a card to say sorry. See, that sort of thing. He's trying to know that what she did was wrong. And then she had to go the extra mile to make a card to actually say, Jack, I'm sorry for taking your pen and making you make a mistake in your homework. So that's the sort of like skills that I imbibe in really young people, to know that if you do something as an adult, you do something wrong, and you've hurt somebody or you've done something wrong to someone, mistakenly, knowingly or unknowingly, is taking that responsibility and knowing that socially that was wrong. Even if you were right by doing it, you should be able to, own up and say, oh, if I do that kind text, if I send a nice text, maybe Cynthia will not be upset again, maybe Omar will not be upset with me, and I can say, I'm sorry, things like that. So it's trying to imbibe those things at a very young age. I believe that emotional intelligence, just like the book Daniel Goleman wrote, is actually better than IQ. A lot of us are focused on, reading and becoming professors and things, but this world is about relationships, about good interpersonal skills. That the people at the top, they formed nice networks, and put their differences aside. They're able to agree on things and make decisions. If you look at the world today, the problems that a lot of us are having, and the wars, the world's cold wars, the real life wars, it's all about maybe someone overstepping and someone overreacting. So when you're thinking about things like emotional intelligence, you're thinking that, okay, this child is 5 years old. I need to have a child who's going to be functional in society. I need to have a child who's not going to throw a tantrum in board meetings. I need to have a child who is going to be able to receive feedback when people say, oh, Ify, I think that was a bit, you shouldn't have, that was a bit much. I'm like, okay, sorry. Yeah. I need to have a child who will be able to blend in and actually make the society a better place. So when children are imbibed with emotional intelligence, then we are building the future and we are building a better society. So I think that's all I have. I'm going to stop sharing my slides and just leave the room for comments and questions. Okay. Any comments, any questions? Amon, I can't hear you if you're saying something.
No, I don't have any question. I just said, well done. That was good.
Thank you. So any comments, any contributions? Oops. I think I saw Ibiri Bolu here somewhere. Hi, Ibiri. Do you guys mind if I throw her on the floor for 1 second, please? Ibiri, so we're coming to the end of the program. Thank you everyone that has supported for the past 6 months. And it's all about raising well and resilient children. And, as mothers, we are focused on that. We want our children to be, quite, useful people in society. And Ibiri is our parenting coach and she's here today. So give us some nuggets, Ibiri. You're mute.
Oh, sorry, I literally just saw your message. So I would have been here earlier. Hello, everyone. I mean, I don't know if you want me to actually talk about anything. I caught the 5 points that you put up, and obviously I totally agree. I was thinking if people want to ask questions, that's another good idea, and I could just answer. Or if people want, if you want me to speak about something in particular, that's great as well. So I caught what you said about emotion, and I always say to people, and I like that. I feel like I'm in a good position to say this as well. And it's great to hear from a doctor. It's great to hear it in a medical group, because a lot of times people stress the academics. And as a teacher of maths, when I say it, people think, well, hold on, but you teach maths. I'm like, yes, but it's not the most important thing. It's the emotional side. And when what I've noticed a lot, and please cut me off at any point or ask me a question, but I wanted to say something about the slides I saw you put up. is that as human beings, a lot of times we're always chasing the external, what we can see. It's much easier to chase the obvious. Like even if, when we're trying to lose weight, we just want to see the numbers go down, but we're not thinking about what's going on inside our bodies when we're doing all these crash diets. If someone says do the slow and steady one, that means that your insides are going well, even though the numbers are going down slower. We don't like that one. We want the things we can see. So with our children, we want the grades, the quick fix. Because it's not because we're bad people, it's because that's what we can measure. I want to see the A. Give me the A, then I'll know that you're doing well. But I cannot measure your emotional intelligence in the same kind of way. There's no grade for that. When you say we're building character strengths, I'm like, oh, but I can't see what level of kindness are you on? How we go? We want to see. And unfortunately, when we chase the external, we actually harm ourselves. And we end up also, unfortunately, putting that on the children. So it's actually, I say to people that, do you know that raising children, focusing on character is actually harder than chasing them, raising them to get the grades. Getting those grades is easier, but we think we're doing hard work by getting them. No, it's much easier than the perseverance, the resilience, the emotional intelligence, the self-regulation. That's much harder. And one of the main reasons why I came into all of this with parenting is because if people don't know, what I do, but actually I teach A-level economics to 16 to 18-year-olds. And I tell you now, the best students that get the best grades in the end, that get their A-levels and go, are not the ones with the highest IQ, is the ones that can persevere. Remember when they get to 16, 18-year-olds, that the books in front of them are not the most important thing. Quite frankly, that chick, whether she likes me or not, that's what's on my mind right now. That boy, it's very important. Their social circle is so important. The friends are so important. The games are so important. The academics is also important, but it doesn't take first place. So you really need that perseverance, that internal motivation, that self-regulation, that self-control. Those are the things that you need to actually get you to sit down and read the book when the football match is on. It's not your IQ that you need then. The way your interpersonal relationships is what will determine whether you get into that circle or whether you're excluded. And if you're excluded, you'll really struggle to cope emotionally and mentally. So to parents, I always say, please deal and focus with the internal, both with ourselves and with our kids, and we'll get that external. We'll get those grades in the end anyway. Right. I just feel like I intruded, I barged into the meeting. So I'm happy to stop and I'll answer questions if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That was last minute. I just texted her. I was like, Ivere, our final speaker had to, do you want to come and say hello to us? Any questions or any comments, please? Iyabo has a question, yes? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Talking about emotional intelligence, I have two teenage daughters. And sometimes you're wondering, is this teenage behavior or something is wrong with this child? That you need to go further and dig in. Do you understand what I don't know if you understand? Like this moment, they'll be so lovey, and then you say, "Can you help me do this?" And it's just like a wild person. I'm like, is something wrong? I'm just asking you to help me. So sometimes it gets me worried that am I missing something from my child? Like, is there something else going on that I haven't gotten to? Because all of a sudden the child that is happy and all of a sudden just becomes kind of like, okay, maybe it's teenage blues. But so how do you balance that? Because sometimes I can't deal with it.
Okay, no, I'll try and answer that one. But the truth is, there could be so many things. Like if we were really in an avenue where we could sit down, if it will tell you this, there's so many questions I'll have to ask you. What is going on? What's happening? All that kind of stuff. But if I was to answer quickly here, the answer is there could be a number of things going on. Their brain is developing quite differently at that time. There are things that they're social. Okay, let me try and help you with this. So when they get to about age 12 to 13, their brain is actually preparing them for independence and the outside world. They are, without them knowing, their brain is working in such a way as if they're about to enter the world independently. It's so interesting. When I started, reading about the brain and I saw that, I was like, gosh, that makes sense why, you know, the Jewish bat mitzvah was when they turned 13. And it makes sense because actually, physiologically, the brain is changing because it's telling you now, human, you're about to leave your family and go and interact in the real world. This is why there's a part of their brain that awakens even more at that age that allows them to form bonds. I'm speaking to medical, so I love this. I'm speaking to people who understand what I'm saying. So they're forming more bonds at this point because they need that bond to then go in and be audacious and take risks and be independent. That's why, even though they can observe the level of risk just like the rest of us adults can, their perspective on it is different. They can see it. They can see, you and I, me and the teenager can see that if you jump, you might hurt yourself. So therefore, the adult will say, therefore, I won't jump. Therefore, but the teenager will say, therefore, I will jump and see how it hurts. And it's because they are doing what they should be doing, because that's how you thrive in the real world, by taking those risks, right? So the point I'm trying to make is all that is going on. Social interaction, social bonds are very important. And it then means that as parents, we can very quickly and very easily become annoying. Because they're trying to, we don't even mean it. It's so easy because they're trying to form these social bonds and we're trying to keep them safe and sensible. Right now, it's very important that I look a certain way or I be a certain way. And that's why I'm not saying we should leave them, no. But if we're aware that we can try our best to manage it, have conversations and all that, because they are trying to get out and form the bond with the outside world. So for example, and they love us, so they still want that. But what tends to happen with parents when they get to teenage years is if we don't get it right, they start being conflicted between forming the new bonds and staying with us. And we want to work in a way that they can somehow, we can be an extension of that bond, or else we're outside of it. My parents just don't understand. If we're always being the voice of reason, sometimes it's too much. So what we want to be doing at that point, and I know that I don't know the specific situation you have, but for teenagers, what we want to be doing with them is making sure that we have boundaries, but these boundaries are not like when they're kids, when they're much younger. These boundaries are agreed with the teenager. These boundaries are flexible, they're not rigid. And these boundaries are, so they're agreed and the consequences are tied to it. But those boundaries have to be fluid compared to when they're younger. So yes, you can go out. You know how mommy really would rather you were inside this house with me, but I understand that you've got to go out. Yes, you can go out, but listen, it's very important that you come back at this time. Let's agree on a time. It's not that they won't break it all, but at least the consequence will be right there, right? You know, but it's letting them know you can. I understand your need for independence, but also please understand my need and let's work together. And that's what tends to work the best. It's so hard. I see it so many times with my teenagers. I see it with the parents that call me and say my child never wants to speak to me. They don't want to tell me what's going on. Your child will be going through conflicts of wanting to share with you and also wanting to keep things away from you. It's so confusing. But if you understand that it's normal, there's nothing wrong with them, they're battling things in their mind, they will come out on the other side, maybe by the age of 20, just as long as you're still there but making sure that you are still that safe, secure place. And when they mess up, this is how we lose them a lot when they're teenagers. When they mess up, how we respond is the key. So many, my students will come to me and tell me that they were vaping and they were caught. And they will tell me, and they can't tell other teachers, because they know that when they tell me, I will listen. I understand where they're coming from. You still have to face the consequence, but the typical, I told you so. How can you not know? Did you not know? How many times? Those sorts of things will push them away and they can't speak to you. And that's the opposite of what you want to do. So you always want to be there and hold their hand to the police station if you have to. I know that sounds awful, but hug you, take it, but you have to go and return that car. Let's go. I'll come with you, but you're returning that car. You know what I'm trying to say? That's the point, but being there. And they honestly, I beg, it's not genetic, but I get you, yeah, but I totally understand. It's a difficult one. And the best answer would be that, yes, that means I'm holding hands, but it's like, you just have to. But if we have younger kids, those of us that have younger kids, there's a lot that we can try and do. It doesn't mean they won't get into any trouble, but there's a lot that we can try and do that will make them feel comfortable when they get to that point. Right, I feel like pausing, but honestly, yeah, but in future, if you ever find me or anywhere, longer discussions of what's going on in the home, how old, did they just have a breakup, all that kind of stuff would be useful to help give you a more direct answer.
Thank you so much, Iyabo. It's always an answer that comes with a very nice lecture after it. Love it, absolutely love it. Any other questions? Vaughn, do you have any questions? Everyone in the room?
No, this is very good session. Thank you for the explanation. I really liked what was said about pursuing the external, and it's easy to put value on what's seen and what's easily celebrated. And I think maybe if I can come up with a question, I think would be, most of the times when you focus on the unseen, you might be in the minority of people, and sometimes kids feel that what they're being taught, even though it's the right thing, not everybody is doing that. So sometimes they feel, out of place, or they feel that they're the odd ones out, for focusing on those things like kindness and things. So I guess it will be, how can we help the children to go through that, that difference, which may come by focusing on things like kindness, politeness, and, emotional strength, rather than the popular thing. When children are going through that, how can we support them to go through that?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a good question. But the truth is that as we keep talking about those things and modeling it for the children, I hear what you're saying about feeling what I found with those character strengths, it pays off. It does pay off quite quickly. Like, for example, something came to mind, and I'm not entirely sure if this helps, but I'm just going to say it because it came to mind as you were speaking. So with my kids, I've got 2 boys, and everyone, whenever people talk about them, they're quite young, but the one who's 10 years old, we always push them and talk to them about the importance of, obviously, as you said, kindness and resilience and perseverance. That's literally what I harp on about. But my point is, in using all of that, you are still using it to push them academically. The difference is, when we focus on the academics, I'm just saying, for example, the academics alone, that's where the issue is. But when I talk about perseverance and all those things, I use that to explain how we should perform on the football pitch and in the classroom. So it's not really separate. Those 2 things are not really separate. So they still don't really feel like outsiders. However, I hear what you're saying, Dr. Vaughn. I hear what you're saying in the sense that I tell them in the ways they should talk and things they should say. When people are saying this, don't join them. It's very easy for other boys to be pushing people around, and they're your friends and you want to get involved, right? So that's one example. Yeah, I say to my kids, no, you're not part of that. In fact, you should be the one to tell people to stop. Now, that thing of telling people to stop is where they struggle. So I'm not going to tell you that my kids have got to that point where they can stop, but my kids have got to the point where they stand back and they don't get involved because they've been told so many times. However, in that same vein, I don't know how to, let me just come out with it. In that same vein, when I tell my kids, go, if a child is alone in the playground, go and ask them how they are. Go and see how people are. If everyone is picking on this child, don't get involved. Do all that. But in that same vein, if I call my son here and I said to him in front of everybody, if somebody came up to you and hit you, what should you do? Before I finish my sentence, he will say, hit them back. Now, look, please, at this point, you can decide that, and I shall never follow Ebere Bolu again. But the truth is, teaching them character strengths. I am not saying lie down on the floor and be walked on, but never go and attack anybody. Never go and do that. And for example, and I say to them with the words, for example, if people say things, you can walk away. But if somebody thinks they can come to you and push you, then you back. And once you've done that, you then walk away. I didn't ask you to now start going into, oh yeah, come, let's, but it's also a way of standing your ground. I can be here from morning till night, being nice to everybody. If someone unmuted their mic and started to call me names, it's simple. I'll smile, mute my mic, and I'm off. But if you came up to me and I was speaking on the stage and you tried to push me, I will push you back, then walk away. And the reason why, and that for me is not, I don't feel like that is crossing the mark, but it's kind of like putting your foot down. Just being honest, and I say this very, very clearly, like I say to my kids, if someone is provoking you and you push them first, you're going to have a problem with me. If someone is calling you names and you call them names back, you're going to have a problem with me. You can walk away. But if as you're walking away, they now think they can push you, that's different. And my kids are clear on it. I've made it so clear for so long. And sometimes before I even get to that point, I never get to the point, you never get to the point where you say in one teaching, this is all the things you do. It takes stages, and then the point, so your child is really grounded with a character. Then they say, then maybe some months they say, but mommy, but this was push me. At that point, I'll be like, no, nobody should touch you. Once you touch them, you go straight to the teacher. So this is it. And you see how my face changed. I can turn from smiling to very quick. We have to hold our ground in some way. We're not asking that our children are walked all over because of being, nice or positive character. No, I can share my stuff with you. It doesn't mean you steal my stuff, So that's what I mean. So I hope that helped. I don't know why that came to mind, but I thought I'd better say that. So you know that I'm not all goody two shoes, but we have to it's to be firm as well.
Thank you. It helped.
Thank you so much, Ron. Shadi stay with her teenager. Shadi, do you have any comments or any questions? You have teenagers. She's on mute. Bless her. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if we don't have any questions or comments, so I think thank you so much, Iberi, for actually coming at impromptu notice. We really, really appreciate it. You have been an asset to us in the past few months, and you have certainly watered us with lots of, knowledge and tips, and how to navigate the journey of parenting. Especially, like I always say, the easiest part is when they're little. The easiest part is when they're little. Like I can't believe my 3-year-old is 3-year-old. Like I'm just wondering, so I have to start parenting him now. Being a baby, all we do is cuddle and breastfeed and just kiss, But then once they get to like 3, then you're trying to build in character. And the question about the character is not when you're there, it's what they do when you're not there. I mean, recently, I don't know whether it's just been luck, but I got a testimony from my kids. I was like, yes. They went to someone's house and they were there all day. And when she brought them back, she was like, your kids are so well behaved. I was like, these are my children. I don't believe so. So that's what a mother wants to hear. It's not about when you're there, it's about when you're not there, what they do. And that's the measure of if what you're doing is working as a parent. So I just want to use the opportunity to encourage every mom out there. Keep pushing, keep striving. The work of parenting it's a God-given job. It's not for everybody. It's children are a gift from heaven. So God has given you that responsibility, and it's important that we get it right. It's like He's giving us a talent, and He expects us to actually multiply it. So it's our purpose as moms, as parents, to be able to bring up our children properly and make them functional people in society. And without much ado, I think we should be coming to a close now. And thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, BWIH, for the wonderful 6 months. It's been very interesting. I've learned so much. Thank you for everyone who's participated. I've had so much fun and I learned a lot. And yes, and that will be bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you at our next event.
Yes. Bye-bye. Thank you, Bear. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks to our speakers.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.